I like how this machine sounds. It sounds nice. It's like some sort of high-tech system. And it's just Nespresso, but it sounds better. I feel like this has to be a newer model. They sound different. It sounds calmer. I really like this apartment. I'm gonna leave them a good review. And they were not cheap. They left 4 Nespresso cups. So that's nice.
Today we are exploring Le Havre, a city that is possibly one of the most unique in the world and definitely one of a kind in France.
This is the second part of our trip to Normandy. If you missed the first one, where we explored the beautiful neighboring town of Honfleur, the episode is linked in the first comment of this video. Le Havre was almost wiped off the face of the planet during the Second World War, and then rebuilt by the incredibly talented architect Auguste Perret, resulting in its entire centre-ville being classified as a UNESCO Heritage Site.
We visited Le Havre back in 2022, so if you want to learn more about the generic history of the city, we recommend that episode.
Today, however, we will be taking you to more specific places we didn't really get the chance to see the last time we were here.
We start with this peculiar installation in the Erignac Square, the narrow house by Erwin Wurm, an Austrian artist who wanted to show his childhood in post-war Austria and his conservative claustrophobic society that he was raised in.
This is his parents' house, created in a narrow, crushed version with a humorous approach, evoking the life of a standard suburban family in Austria.
Since it's so narrow, we think it's particularly emblematic to have this work presented in Le Havre, the city that suffered so greatly during the Second World War. It was so narrow, we barely fit.
Frankly, I was afraid that I would not fit. There were some parts where you just like walk sideways. I absolutely love it. This is a permanent exhibit, so basically whenever you are in Le Havre, you can pass by and check it out. I think it closes for lunch break between 12:30 and 2:30, something like that. So when you come to the door, they explain to you, they give you a little bit of a background history of why and what the idea is of the artist. It's a really quick visit, but what I love the most about it is that there's so much attention to detail. You really feel like you are back in the historic apartment, but at the same time it's so narrow, so he kind of tries to squeeze you to let you know how tight and suffocating his childhood was in his family, which is absolutely insane. You can really feel it. So we are walking around. It's windy, it's cold. So I was just saying, people are probably thinking we're crazy to be wearing just this clothes. And I'm just saying, you know, we're here only for a few hours. And then we're going back to our region because it's much softer and much nicer weather. But we love it here anyway. It's just, I'm just realizing today, I realized it today, that I don't think I could ever live in the north of France. Because this wind, even now, it's calmed down. Last night, our windows were like, it felt like they were gonna fly out. When you visit this city, you cannot skip L'Église Saint-Joseph. It is impossible to miss it.
Conceived by Auguste Perret, the Saint-Joseph Church is one of the architectural masterpieces of the last century.
With its height of 107 meters and visible from as far as 60 kilometers offshore on a clear day, this church has become an emblem of the post-war reconstruction of Europe, a sort of modern renaissance, if you will.
Due to its lantern design, the entire building opens up to you as you walk in. One of our subscribers has mentioned that standing in the center feels like standing under a giant Christmas tree, and we couldn't have put it better in words.
And this is largely due to its luminous stained glass design that embellishes the imposing concrete structure that towers over the city.
The 6,500 colored stained glass panels create a beautiful dance between color and light here. Reds and brown wood in the north, golden in the south, pinks and oranges in the west, greens and purples in the east.
With their scent, the glass becomes lighter and more translucent, creating an ethereal effect of spiritual elevation. Every bit of this building has purpose and a role to play.
It's magnificent and displays the true prowess of Auguste Perret and those working with him.
Passing by the famous Volcano Theatre reminded us of our first visit to the city. We stayed at the apartment with the view directly at the theatre and the Place Général de Gaulle.
It is a strange feeling to be back here 2 years later and yet feels like it wasn't so long ago.
we arrived to La Maison de l'Armateur, or ship owner's house.
This place is a rare witness to Le Havre life in the 18th century, considering so much was lost.
This house museum recreates an atmosphere of a rich bourgeois residence and showcases the maritime trade of the time.
It's honestly a miracle that this building still stands here. Indeed, it was damaged during the bombardments of 1944, but it withstood and made it to our time.
It was classified as a historic monument back in 1950. However, was only opened to the public 56 years later after extensive renovations.
The house was first constructed in 1790s by Paul Michel Thibault and bought by the rich merchant Martin Pierre Fouache in 1800 to make it his winter family residence and install his offices as well as to receive his guests and clients.
The layout was done in neoclassical style by Pierre-Adrien Paris, who was the former designer of the King's Office. The house is set up on 5 levels. The rooms follow one another around a captivating octagonal skylight, which is really the centerpiece of the whole building. It's fascinating.
Marine trade was extremely profitable and Le Havre was at the center of it at the time.
As you climb the floors, different rooms of different purpose are presented. We particularly loved the noble floor with the residence rooms of the family as well as the rooms for guests. The grand dining room and the bedrooms are exquisite and really remind of the owner's success. On the last floor, the collections focus on marine life of Le Havre, reminding us that it is indeed a port city with centuries-long history deeply connected to the sea. This floor takes you back in time with its carefully chosen decor, collections and incredible views that overlook the port. There is also a nod to Napoleon I, who once said that Le Havre, Rouen and Paris were all the same city with the Seine as one big street. Interestingly, today the ports of these 3 cities form one grand public port entity called Appartement Port. Perhaps Napoleon was onto something after all. If you are in Le Havre, this museum is a must visit. We loved every bit of it. It wouldn't be a trip to Le Havre without Auguste Perret. And while we had already told you about this incredible architect in our last Havre episode, we think you'd enjoy visiting l'Appartement témoin Perret Model Apartment. This is a reconstituted apartment designed by Atelier Perret from 1946. If at the previous museum we were transported into the 18th century, here we are in the 1950s Havre, where the urgent need for housing was at its peak. It must be noted that not all of the apartments looked the same. The property you got depended on what you had prior to the war. The value of the new house was equivalent to the one you lost. However, overall improvement of quality of life was generalized with the optimal sunshine, integrated kitchen, bathroom, heating, and even a garbage disposal vent right inside your kitchen, something we were genuinely surprised by. Everyday objects like the fridge, gas stove, vacuum cleaner, and other pleasures of the modern times are presented here, and it's truly fascinating. The furniture is what you'd expect in the apartments. We loved majority of it, although surprisingly there was no sofa. You genuinely feel like you've traveled back in time, as tiniest of details is well thought through. Even the newspapers and magazines politely inform you that you are no longer in the year 2024. The Perret Model Apartment, restored to its original state, is today in accordance with the plans and developments presented by Auguste Perret in Paris in 1947 and then in Le Havre in 1949. Unlike his contemporaries, Perret believed in building something new without losing the knowledge and history of the predecessors. He developed Le Havre with that approach, and even though the buildings we see today look new, certain architectural elements such as tall French windows, as well as the horizontal lines via creation of balconies à la Haussmann, are prominently present. If you are interested in the work of Perret and would like to understand the urban transformation of Le Havre better, you should definitely book yourself a visit here. We'll leave the tourism office website in the description of this video. As we left the apartment, it was almost the time to head back to Paris. And even though the weather was not in the least pleasant, we had to pass by the beach. It's mandatory for us and our well-being to come and say hi to the sea, even when it's not in the best of moods. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you liked this episode as much as we did. If you liked this episode, give us a like. If you don't, give us a dislike. And until the next one, now I'm gonna go and fight the wind. Bye.